At first glance, the launch looked like a triumph. Headlines hinted at instant success. Social chatter buzzed with excitement. A lifestyle brand tied to a famous name had finally arrived, and according to whispers from inside the camp, it disappeared almost as quickly as it appeared. Products allegedly gone in under an hour. 45 minutes to be precise. A blink and you miss it moment meant to signal overwhelming demand. But success in business isn't measured by whispers, it's measured by numbers. And curiously, no numbers were ever shared. There were no public sales figures, no celebratory breakdowns, no proud announcements boasting volume or revenue. Just carefully styled photos, calm beige visuals, and interviews that leaned heavily on atmosphere instead of evidence. The narrative was clear. This brand was thriving. The proof, however, was conspicuously absent. And that's where curiosity stepped in. Because in the digital age, the truth doesn't always come from insiders or leaks. Sometimes it comes from someone clicking add to cart. A shopper, not intending to buy but simply testing the system, began adding unusually large quantities of products to their online basket. Most retail platforms are programmed to stop you. They flash warnings, they impose limits, they tell you inventory is running low. This one didn't. Instead, it quietly allowed the cart to fill, and fill, and fill. What emerged wasn't a sellout story, it was an inventory revelation. Behind the polished website and soft focus branding sat staggering quantities of unsold products. Tens of thousands of jars, boxes upon boxes of spreads, teas, candles, and specialty items waiting in warehouses. Not dozens, not hundreds, hundreds of thousands. When the numbers were added together, the scale became impossible to ignore. Close to 1 million items still in stock. The contrast was jarring. A brand presented as scarce and exclusive was in reality overflowing. If each item cost only a few dollars to produce, a conservative estimate, that represented millions tied up in inventory alone. Product aging, packaging sitting idle, capital frozen. For any business, that's a warning sign. For a brand positioned as premium, it's alarming. The sellout narrative didn't just weaken, it collapsed. A luxury brand doesn't claim instant demand while quietly storing mountains of unsold goods. The illusion only works until someone looks behind the curtain. And once the internet did, it didn't look away. But the real trouble didn't stop at warehouses. It followed customers home. Because when the first orders arrived, expectations were sky high. Buyers anticipated refinement, weight, detail, the kind of tactile experience that justifies premium pricing. Luxury doesn't announce itself loudly, it proves itself quietly. What customers found instead was underwhelming. Packaging felt light, labels looked thin and uneven, jars appeared ordinary, tissue paper lacked structure, the carefully curated beige aesthetic, stunning online, translated poorly in real life. What was meant to feel minimalist instead felt unfinished. Then came the products themselves, teas that smelled fragrant but tasted faint, decorative elements that felt more decorative than intentional, spreads with inconsistent textures. Some containers weren't filled evenly, others looked rushed as though assembly had been done in haste rather than care. None of these issues alone would have destroyed a brand, but together they painted a picture of a launch that prioritized image over execution. Customers began voicing disappointment, not dramatically, not loudly, but consistently. And consistency is what brands fear most. The fantasy was slipping, not because of critics or tabloids, but because of experience. People weren't rejecting the idea of the brand, they were reacting to what they held in their hands. And that distinction mattered. Returns started quietly, as they always do. Every new brand expects a few. But these didn't plateau. They grew. First, a trickle. Then a steady stream. Then a surge. What made the situation more troubling was the reason many items came back. Some customers didn't even open the products. They took one look at the presentation and decided it wasn't worth keeping. That kind of return speaks volumes. It says disappointment happened before use, before taste, scent, or function. Reports surface of loose seals, wrinkled labels, packaging flaws that should never slip through quality control at premium price points. And then came the moment that turned frustration into disbelief. Candles without wicks. A decorative object sold as functional, missing the one element that gives it purpose. It wasn't just an error, it became a symbol. A small detail, yes, but luxury lives and dies by details. Behind the scenes, urgency replaced optimism. Teams scrambled, suppliers were questioned, processes reviewed. The conclusion was uncomfortable but clear. Production had been rushed, oversight was inconsistent, standards slipped under pressure to launch quickly. Customers weren't just returning products, they were returning trust. And while internal teams worked overtime, another shift was happening, one far more dangerous. Retail partners went quiet. Not confrontational, not angry, just distant. Emails slowed, calls ended with vague assurances, future conversations were postponed. In retail, silence is often the loudest response. Stores don't gamble on brands that generate high returns, high complaints, and uncertain quality. Shelf space is valuable. Risk is calculated. To them, the brand wasn't aspirational, it was unstable. That realization hit hard. Momentum stalled, enthusiasm cooled, the excitement that once surrounded the launch was replaced with caution. The aesthetic itself began to work against the brand. Minimalism is unforgiving. Without precision, it stops reading as elegant and starts reading as empty. Beige, when executed perfectly, feels calm. When executed poorly, it feels disposable. Customers didn't see intention anymore. They saw shortcuts. And once a luxury brand loses its illusion, there's nothing left to protect it. Internally, the conversations grew serious. The data was undeniable. Returns weren't slowing, they were accelerating. This wasn't a perception problem. It wasn't public relations. It was product-market mismatch. The truth was simple and brutal. The brand promised more than it delivered, and customers, polite but firm, made their verdict clear. Many wanted the concept to succeed. They liked the vision, they liked the story, but liking an idea doesn't justify keeping a product that doesn't match its price. Some buyers even repackaged items carefully before sending them back, as if disappointed rather than angry. That quiet rejection is the hardest kind to recover from. Now, the brand stands at a crossroads. One path requires rebuilding from the ground up. New suppliers, stronger quality control, slower production, a recalibrated vision that values substance as much as image. The other path is quieter. Let the brand fade. No announcement, no scandal, just gradual disappearance into the archive of celebrity ventures that didn't find their footing. Because here's the truth no branding can escape. Luxury isn't declared. It isn't photographed. It isn't whispered in interviews. Luxury is proven again and again through execution. And now, the world isn't watching the aesthetic, it's watching the response. Because the next move will decide whether this was a temporary stumble or the moment the illusion finally dissolved.